Hey guys, so I'm gonna do another one of these sample answers here. Hope you find it useful. This time, the text I'm gonna look at is um, Of Mice and Men. There's the text there, Steinbeck. There's your characters, George and Lenny. The other significant characters, there's your key moments. And I have my quotes all laid out, and I can practice by going into my quotes and finding them and using them to write answers. And hopefully then I'll remember at least part of them on the day of the exam. So what we're looking at here now is this question. Just sorry, no, that's the wrong thing. Done. So looking at this question, I looked at it in a previous video. We talked about it at The Outsiders. So it's this question. Um, Choose a novel you've studied in which a character experiences a struggle or conflict. With reference to one or more key moments, outline the struggle or conflict your chosen character experienced and explain whether they handled the situation well or not. And the second part then, how did your chosen character's response to the struggle or conflict you discussed in part A affect the rest of the novel? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to write about, sorry, I'm going to the wrong thing there. There we go. I'm going to choose to write about George. So as you know, George is the carer for Lenny. Lenny is, sorry, I'm just going to check something here for a second. Text on my phone. Technology always getting in the way. George is his job is really to um, look after Lenny. Lenny is he's disabled. He's mentally handicapped. He's whatever term you want to use. I don't know what your teacher says about him, but basically he's not really. He's a grown, physically a grown man, but he's a child, psychologically, emotionally, mentally. And George decides to look after Lenny. Now, importantly, that's really difficult for George. And here are some examples. He says, Lenny, for God's sake, don't drink so much. You drink out of the gutter if you were thirsty. Jesus Christ, you're a crazy bastard. And there are if he finds out what a crazy bastard you are, we won't get no job. So this shows the struggle and the problem that George has looking after Lenny, who he cares for. And he says, God, you're a lot of trouble. I could get along so easy and so nice if I didn't have you on my tail. You crazy son of a bitch, you keep me in hot water all the time. So to me, there's like a wealth of things there for me to write about George's struggle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab out these quotes. And I'm going to throw them over into this Pages document where I have the questions written down. Okay. I'll do it here. Okay. And I'm going to write my paragraphs. And I'm going to write my paragraphs using or following the Rice rules. And again, I've mentioned this before in different classes. Relevant topic sentences, informed and supported or validated by quotation. Don't know why there's a full stop there. There shouldn't be. Or reference, and kind of write as clearly as I can and punctuate, and just make sure that you're on the question. If you're on the question and you're trying to explain your evidence in the light of the question, you're giving yourself a good chance. Okay, so here's the question. With reference to just let me change the font here. I'm going to use the noteworthy. So with reference to one or more key moments, outline the struggle or conflict your chosen character, experience, and explain whether, in your opinion, they handled the situation well or not. Now, let me just go back to two things for a second. So remember, if you look at this document, look at all this. You can't write about everything that you know about your novel. You just can't, and you're not expected to. You're expected to have to reach into key moments and use those key moments knowledgeably to write effective answers. The other thing that I want to go back to is the question, because the question, just to emphasize, is worth 25 marks. Sorry, 30 marks, my apologies. And there's, you have to name the character there, the author. So you don't have to write, the novel I chose to write about is Of Mice and Men by um, John Steinbeck, because you've already done that. You don't have to write the character I have selected is George. You just get straight into it. In other words, no need for an opening paragraph. Now, your teacher might say you have to write an opening paragraph, but there really is no need for an opening paragraph. So you've got 30 marks, and you can see here there's a lot of writing space. But for me, the idea that you're going to try and write a paragraph every 5 marks available, it's very ambitious. You might get there if you're hitting distinctions. What I'm going to try to do here is write 2 to 3 paragraphs per per section. Okay, and I'm going to keep my paragraphs relatively short, between 50 and 80 words per paragraph. So here we go. Let's write the answer to the first question. So George Milton So there's a decent paragraph. It's probably longer than I said it was going to be. Let's have a look and see. So it's coming in at 82. Oh, great. I'm delighted with myself. 82 words. I said between 50 and 80 words. Not too bad at all. Not too shabby, Paul. Okay, so there's 82 words. So you're showing real knowledge there. You're on the question. You're talking about George. You're saying that he struggles because of uh, poverty, but you're saying mainly he struggles because he's loyal, and that loyalty means he won't abandon Lenny Small. Sorry. And you're using terms like, if you noticed, I was going to say adds greatly to his struggle, but I said no, don't need to use struggle again. Use problems. That's the same thing. Vary your vocabulary. And then here you see that George encounters or meets. Now you never write encounter stroke meets, but like if you're right, if you say meets, that's clear and good. If you say encounters, that's much better as an English student. So sometimes in English, it's not like use big words for the sake of using big words, but sometimes in English, the vocabulary you use does make a significant difference to the quality of your writing. So there's one paragraph. Okay, now I didn't put a quote in that paragraph for deliberately because I'm kind of giving an overview. It's like an introductory paragraph, like an introduction. Okay, and now I'm going to get into evidence of these struggles. Now, just let me do something really quickly here, just to save me time. What one was it again? Noteworthy. There we go. So I'll just copy this. And I'll have it ready when I go to write this paragraph. And then I just pop my quote in there. I know that's you say easy for you, Paul. We can't do that in the exam, but if you know the quotes, if you've done your work and you've learned your few quotes as you're supposed to, like if you want top grades, you're supposed to. They should be able to just pop them straight in there straight away. Sorry, get rid of that. I'll change that to his companion because you don't want Lenny. So the struggle, there we go, is clear from the very beginning. Lenny is like a child, and George has to look after him like a parent. A good example of this is when they approach the town of Soledad, and George has to tell his companion, Lenny, for God's sake, don't drink so much. You think you drink out of a gutter if you was thirsty. So he's frustrated there, and that's because he has to mind Lenny. And what does he call Lenny? Oh, sorry. Now, so we know there's two good paragraphs in relation to, or in response to part A. Now look at, let's see if you can squeeze out a third paragraph. Again, go and look at your quotes there that we have at the top. He says, "You're a lot of trouble. I could get along so easy and so nice if I didn't have you on my tail. You keep me in hot water all the time." So let's go. Let's use those. And now I'm going to pop my quotes in. I'll use this one actually. It's a nice one. And see where it says if he, and just put this in. You can allow to do this in a quote. I'll just actually, if he, the rancher, finds out what a crazy bastard you were, we won't get no job. And that's a perfect quote to put in. It's an absolutely ideal quote to put in. You don't need another one, but I'm gonna put one in anyway because I'm I really like the idea of students showing a bit of ambition. So I'm just going to go here. I'm going to take this one. And again, I'll pop this quote in now. I'm going to go straight back to the question. And don't forget the key word in the question was struggle. And there we have a good paragraph. So the first paragraph is 82 words. I think these ones are a bit longer. It's always, I know you're saying to yourself, Paul, it's easy when you're typing. This one is a bit long. Oh, look at 80 words. Come on, Paul, you're doing a good job here. Again, really good length paragraph. Not over long, certainly reasonable to get that done in the 3 or 4 minutes you have to write a paragraph if you're practiced. Again, it's not reasonable if you haven't practiced. A lot of students say, I can't, I don't have time. Well, like if you spent a bit more time practicing, you probably do better. That one's slightly over long because I put the second quote in. Second quote wasn't needed, but I put it in just to show you how to integrate, to show like what the really top students do. But even without the second quote, it'll be a very good paragraph. So there you have a really good response to part A. We read it back. So it says, George Milton is an unemployed drifter. He lives in California during the Great Depression and experiences great poverty. That would seem to be enough of a struggle, but George's life is complicated by the fact that he is a decent man. He is loyal to Lenny Small, a physically strong but intellectually disabled character. George made a promise to Lenny's Aunt Clara that he would look after Lenny, and that adds greatly to the problems that George encounters or meets in his life. This struggle is clear from the very beginning. Lenny is like a child and George has to look after him like a parent. A good example of this, so give your examples, is when they approach the town of Soledad and George has to tell his companion, Lenny, for God's sake, don't drink so much. You drink out of a gutter if you was thirsty. George is frustrated because he has to look after Lenny, who he calls a crazy son of a bitch. Not ideal to end on a quote, but I think it works perfectly well. George's problems continue. Again, I'm on problems because that's to do with struggle. When the pair look for employment at the ranch at Soledad, on the ranch at Soledad, George has to warn Lenny not to speak and says, if he, the rancher, finds out what a crazy bastard you were, we won't get no job. George just wants to work and survive, and looking after Lenny makes this challenging again, going to the question, varying my vocabulary, using synonyms. As is clear when George says, I could get along so easy and so nice if I didn't have you on my tail. So George's loyalty to Lenny really does make his life more difficult. Again, to the question, and this is something he has to struggle with throughout his life. Now, for me, if you were marking that, I'd give you all the marks. If I was marking that, I'd give you 15 marks. I think it's a very, very strong response. So that's a good model for those of you who are doing Of Mice and Men. And even if you're not doing Of Mice and Men, it's a good model to show you how to build an answer. Okay, now let's look at the second part now. How did your chosen character's response to the struggle or conflict you discussed in part A affect the rest of the novel? I mean, that's as easy as it gets. It's as easy as it gets. Let's have a look at, sorry, no, close this, Of Mice and Men. And we know if you're studying Of Mice and Men, you know what happens in that text. We know that Lenny comes into conflict with Curly. And let's have a look and see here if I can find a quote. The comment by Candy: Curly's like a lot of guys. He hates big guys. He's all the time picking scraps with big guys, kind of like he's mad at them because he ain't a big guy. Great quote to use. I'm going to steal that. And don't forget, what does George end up doing? Sorry, what does Lenny end up doing? He ends up accidentally killing poor Curly's wife. And Curly, who hates Lenny anyway because he, humiliated him or crushed him when he tried to pick on him, he um, sets up the lynch mob to catch and kill Lenny and George. Of course, you know what George does at the end of the novel. And if you haven't read the novel, switch off now if you don't want to know. Spoiler alert. He has to kill his friend. And the end of the novel is the most amazing piece of writing by John Steinbeck. It's one of the best pieces of writing I've ever read, and I do nothing but read books. And George raised the gun and steadied it. And he brought the muzzle of it close to the back of Lenny's head. The hand shook violently. He pulled the trigger. Lenny jarred and then settled slowly forward into the sand, and he lay without quivering. Such a tragic ending to the amazing novel. So there you have two quotes, which will suffice to answer this question. Hope you can watch this, I suppose. Nobody's forcing you to watch this, and it's free, so hope you find this in some way useful. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll move all this down onto the one page so you can see it. And off we go. So we're looking at how did he respond, okay? So I'm going to write a quick paragraph in which I incorporate that quote, okay? I'll cut the quote down. You should never use a huge quote like that. And there we go. Curly is a spoiled bully who was described by Candy as all the time picking scraps with big guys, kind of like he's mad at them because he ain't a big guy. Sorry, that's a mistake. Reread your work, Paul. I'm trying to keep this short because I know you haven't got the time to write very long paragraphs. So it's actually difficult enough for me to do that. I like to write longer answers. Anyway, again, if you go back to the question, Um, it's about struggle. So again, I tried to keep it short, but that's a bit long. Then he comes into conflict with Curly. Yeah, 114 words. Not mad long, but kind of longer than I know most of you would manage. So I don't want you to be giving out to me, but I'm just trying to show you, give you ideas, I suppose. I shouldn't feel guilty for that. So how did your chosen character? And I'm only going to write two paragraphs here, so maybe that's a reason why I can make these ones a little bit longer. So how your chosen character's response to the struggle affects the rest of the novel. So then he comes into conflict with Curly. That's it, the rest of the novel. The rancher's son. Curly is a spoiled bully who is described by Candy as all the time picking scraps with big guys, kind of like he's mad at them because he ain't a big guy. When Curly clashes with Lenny, he is humiliated and hates George for remaining loyal to Lenny. So that's George's struggle. The situation is then made much worse. Again, struggle, problems, conflict. When Lenny accidentally kills Curly's wife, and the posse set out to lynch him. To lynch is to murder him without, to kill him without any due process or trial. Um, George's loyalty to Lenny is always added to his problem. So again, I'm completely loyal to the question the whole time. Conflict, problems, but he will not abandon his friend. And this adds greatly to the drama at the end of the novel. And the reason I'm talking about the drama at the end of the novel is because the question is about the rest of the novel. Okay, so that'll do. So let's finish this now, and hopefully you'll find this a useful answer for your preparation. You might be able to use it as a model answer if you're studying Of Mice and Men. So, and I'll just edit this um, quote down. I'll just get rid of that part there. Sorry. Yeah, that'll do. And get rid of that. George raised the gun and said, it brought the muzzle of it close to the back of Lenny's head before killing his friend. Now that'll do me. I'm going to take a break now. Let's have a do a count. So there we have 124 words, a little bit long. We won't panic because we're only writing 2 paragraphs and we're all on question and we're showing ambition in the way we're writing. So the question is asking, how did your chosen character's response to the struggle or conflict you discussed affect the rest of the novel? George is faced with a terrible decision. Does he allow his friend to be murdered? So the source of his struggle always is his loyalty to Lenny, and that's evidenced in the first part of the answer. He knows that the mob will put his friend through agonies before they kill him. I think that's very clear language. So he decided to kill him himself. This is captured in the key moment when George raised the gun. Lovely integration of the quote into your sentence. Nice flow. And stated it, and he brought the muzzle of it close to the back of Lenny's head. Use of ellipses at the end to show where the quote ends is a bit more, but you don't have to use them all, before killing his friend. I don't know. I'm going to change that because I always kill him himself. That's okay. This seems to be a cruel act, but it is in fact an act of love. George's love for Lenny added greatly to his struggles. There we go. And this means he cannot abandon him to Curly's cruelty. The moment when George kills Lenny made the ending of Mice and Men both impactful and unforgettable, and that's relevant to the end, the rest of the novel. So I think I've done a decent job there. And I think if I was doing my junior cycle and I wrote answers akin to that, I'm certainly going to get a merit. I'm certainly going to get a higher merit, and in with a chance of getting a distinction because my work is relevant, informed, clear, and explained. Can you do it within the time limits? That's the big struggle. Hope you found that useful, folks. Thank you.